Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal. Out of all the coolest things we got out of the patch 11.2 PTR, I think one of my favorite parts is the brand new tier sets that every class is getting. But instead of giving us one specific tier set bonus for us to play around with and talent into to amplify, instead every class gets access to two of them, one for every hero spec that you get. As the tier sets are almost like an extension of our hero talents that add additional components for those hero talents that give them new gameplay and new direction and some very powerful bonuses. So far on the channel we've covered classes like Death Knight, Rogue, and Mage, but I thought it's a good idea to go over the class of Hunter as well, as these gotta be some of my favorite and potentially some of the more powerful tier sets that I've seen so far, based on tuning of course, but I like the direction that I've taken towards Dark Ranger, Sentinel in particular, Survival, as well as the Pack Leader, and finding new ways to add even more flavor to some of these existing hero talent options. Today I want to take a look at the visuals, but also how each and every single one of these hero talents affects marksmanship, survival, and beast mastery in a variety of different ways. As always, if you guys want to see more regular class updates like these for the patch 11.2 PTR, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. Starting out with the tier set, I understand why some hunters, actually a lot of hunters, are kind of not happy with the set. Let me take off the weapon here for just a second, just so you can see the entire thing. But I don't hate it. Look at the actual set, at least the mythic variation. I don't necessarily hate it. I understand what they were trying to go for when it comes to the set itself. They were basically trying to make Alaria's set, or kind of looking like a Lariat set. It's not quite perfect, but like the breastplate matches, some of the other pieces match. At least in mythic variation, it's not terrible. Some of the other recolors are not great. They're okay. It's like a very plain set that could be mistaken for a mage's set. I could, like, without the helm, if you took that off, but over the other pieces, I could totally see this be a mage's set as well. So with not great recolors, not a lot of variational options, I understand why hunters are not super happy with the set that they got. It's not the worst, but I feel like Hunter, Mage, and Monk are the three classes, in my opinion, that get screwed over on the tier sets a lot of the time. Like, I've seen some of the other sets where it's like, we have, what is it, Aberrus was the last time, where it's like, so many classes get cool new sets, and then Hunter look like, what did Hunter look like? In fact, yeah, that's what Hunters look like. It wasn't great. Like, everything but the helm, everything else looks fine. That helm, though, I'm not a fan of. That should have been like a helm with like a face guard of like a dragon, or at least covered your eyes and give you like glowing eyeballs instead, you know, things like that. I feel like it's just super unfortunate. Not the worst set, but I can definitely see why some people are not happy with the visual outlook. Although I feel like if they were to make the set closer to that of Alaria's outfit and change the helm completely to something else, something more non-hooded, I think that would work just fine as well. However, while the Hunter's tier looks are a mixed bag, the sets themselves are awesome. What's cool about the 11.2 is how different each set is. Like, every single class is going to have access to two sets, because every class has access to a one hero spec, and the other hero spec as its own sets. So I'm mostly going to go to this video from a perspective of hero specs more than anything. So we're going to look at Dark Ranger sets first, starting with the spec of Marksmanship Hunter, a fan favorite as of recently, so it's going to be fun to take a look at exactly what it offers. And what these tier sets essentially do is they help expand on what the Dark Ranger is going to be able to bring, but with some nice new additions. So the Dark Ranger actually has gotten quite a bit of a buff overall. Dark Ranger got a bit of a revamp. Black Arrow cannot be used on enemies above 80% health or 20% below natively. It doesn't need a talent anymore for it. And instead, there's a new talent that used to give you this opener and execute value, now is a talent called Bell Tolls. Firing an arrow increases all damage dealt by 3%, multiple instances more overlaps, and the more black arrows you can fire off, the more damage your hunter can do. This also applies for your pets as a Beastmaster Hunter, so this is really nice, and actually a nice way for you to be able to ramp up a little bit of burst. They also changed up a couple of things, like Bleak Powder will do AoE damage, and with the talent of Umbral Reach, that Bleak Powder will actually apply Black Arrow's periodic damage effect to nearby enemies, which makes talents such as Phantom Pain, that allows your abilities to cleave off everybody that's dotted by Black Arrow, a lot easier. They changed a little bit how Withering Fire works, so it doesn't spam fire it as much, but still with the changes to Umbral Arrow, that becomes really good in AoE. Then you have things like Soul Drinker that can buff the damage, or Shadow Hound, which have also been improved a little bit in the overall damage, but the playstyle itself has gotten improved in 11.2, and I love the changes they've seen. I love the visual updates we saw for like, what, 11.1, and now in 11.2, they're really starting to refine it a lot better, and Dark Range is looking like a very fun playstyle option, and like some of these other talent additions like Fan of Pain for marksmanship hunters can be huge in terms of overall damage, so there's some really cool stuff that it's bringing to the table on its own. However, the tier set helps enhance it even further. From a marksmanship hunter, the tier set gives you black arrow damage is increased by 10%, bleak powder damage increased by 20, and the cooldown of your true shot is reduced by 30 seconds. True Shot is your primary buff damage ability as a marksmanship hunter. Normally, it's a 2-minute cooldown and can be paired either with the talent of Unnerving Vision that makes that 2-minute cooldown have crit scaling and crit damage scaling over time, or you could also do Calling the Shots, which reduces the cooldown of the ability by 30 seconds natively. So now together with the Dark Ranger 2 set and Calling the Shots, you can bring True Shot down to a single minute. So every minute you'll have a 15-second window where you have more critical damage and critical strike damage, plus it reduces the cooldown of Aim Shot and Rapid Fire by 60%, allowing you to use them fairly regularly. This, by itself as a tier set, might not feel like a Dark Ranger specific thing outside of the Black Arrow enhancements, but that cooldown reduction is huge for marksmanship. This gives you a pretty wild window of how you can optimize your hunter in terms of cooldowns, in terms of abilities. Now, you can either go for a 1.5 minute CD class, place yourself with a 1.5 minute CD trinket, and then pick up Unnerving Vision for even more critical strike damage scaling. Or you can now go for a 1 minute CD, which is amazing in content like Mythic Plus dungeons where you want to have constant damage output on targets no matter what. Like the more times you get to use your cooldowns throughout a run, the better. It doesn't shorten the cooldown of your true shot at all. It gives you really good uptime. And for the dungeon that I did, which was Arakaram, my true shot uptime was like 34% of the run, so it was really good. There's probably some areas where I probably could have used it more aggressively, but I'm still so used to saving true shot for like really big burst windows. I probably should start sending it immediately, and I wonder if we could get that uptime to like 40 or 50% of the dungeon overall, without necessarily reducing the impact of his damage, which is massive. For marksmanship, this feels really good, and Dark Ranger becomes even deadlier than ever as Dark Ranger gets more uptime with Withering Fire. This means more black arrows that you can fire off to multiple targets. With Bleak Powder and the buffs that that's gotten, that's a lot more AoE damage. It just ends up being really strong altogether. It's a very slight thing, but it has like such a ripple effect. It is awesome. The first set reads, Withering Fire's black arrow damage is increased by 50%. So again, it encourages for you to get the Withering Fire capstone used more often. So as marksmanship, you are again encouraged to go for a 1 minute CD, which you shot with Calling the Shots. Again, you could go for a 1.5 minute CD for a very big burst window. But again, the game is encouraging you for you to pick up Calling the Shots, and that seems to be the more popular pick amongst players on PTR so far. This may be subject to tuning in the future. Consuming Death Blow has a 50% chance to cause all Black Arrow barrages during the next Withering Fire to fire one additional Black Arrow. So it seems very strong overall. At least numerically it seems okay. Tuning is still not final, but it seems like a very solid tier set that just amplifies the effectiveness of marksmanship to great lengths, and it feels really good and gives you so much more freedom as to how you use your true shot cooldown, where normally you would save it for very specific situations. Now you might just send it every single trash bag that you can. It seems very strong and really good to play with overall. It speeds up the playstyle of Marksmanship Hunter and allows you just to play the spec in a bit of a smoother way. And then while as a Beastmaster Hunter, Dark Ranger normally doesn't really seem that good of a combo, that did end up amplifying Dark Ranger a little bit. Essentially, every time Bleak Powder hits 2 or more targets, so every time your Black Arrow hits a couple enemies stacked together, Bleak Powder explodes, and if it takes 2 targets, then it gives it basically for free. They're trying to make Dark Ranger a little bit better for the Beastmaster Hunter playstyle as best as they can, so it's at least an attempt to try to make it a bit better. For them, the tier set is going to be slightly different. Black Arrow still does more damage, Bleak Arrow also still does more damage, but the cooldown of Call of the Wild is reduced by 60 seconds. Call of the Wild is the ability required for Withering Fire to proc, so you're essentially transforming a 2-minute cooldown to a 1-minute cooldown, which is pretty awesome because it's a pretty strong cooldown on its own. It can be amplified with initially with Beast, Bloody Frenzy, or with Wild Instincts for single target damage, so it just gives you more Black Arrow uses and just allows you to use the ability a lot more aggressively. Also, the 4 set is about the same. Withering Fire's Black Arrow damage is increased by 50%, so you want to use it pretty regularly. Consuming Deathblow has a 50% chance to cause all Black Arrow barrages during the next Withering Fire to deal 1 additional Black Arrow. So you want to pick up talents like Deathblow, which I actually don't have, and it's probably better to pick up Hunter Spray, especially if you're going to be summoning up a bunch of pets. Now that Black Arrow cannot claim multiple targets with the Hunting Prey, it can deal more damage, and that can also deal Blake Powder damage, and that can also AoE things around you. So at least there are some synergies that are trying to be created in order to make the playstyle a little bit better overall. However, BM did get a different mastery now, where that mastery normally buffs up the damage of their pets, but it can also buff the damage of your shots and traps. So now when you have your Black Arrow, that is directly buffed by your mastery, though to a half a value compared to all of your pets. So at least there's a bit more synergy to try to make BM as Dark Ranger a little bit better. But only time will tell if this will be good, though I do like the tier set in general, as it seems like a fairly solid combo. I'm usually a big fan of cooldown reductions because it allows you to use cooldowns in a variety of different ways. From there, we move on to the hero talent of the Sentinel, which is another popular one. Even though it's a very passive hero talent by itself, compared to Dark Ranger at least, it is very effective, and they have tried to make it a little bit better. And this new tier set actually gives you a little bit of a gameplay mechanic to play around with. Nothing too crazy, but it is at least pretty impactful. So with that being said, Rapid Fire 2 set does increase your damage by 25%. When Lunarstorm fades, you now gain the buff of Boon of a Loon, causing next 2 aim shots to deal arcane damage and have the damage increase by 20%. So with the Boon of a Loon, it ends up amplifying your aim shot, which can already be amplified by a number of abilities, but it can be amplified even further, so now the ability hits a little bit harder. Now with the 4 set, it actually transforms the tier set of 2 set a little bit more. Sentinel's damage is increased by 25%, so you just get more raw passive damage, and the Sentinel buff is literally a passive. Your attacks have a chance to apply stacks of Sentinel, and then while those stacks are higher than 3, there's a chance that reapplying it just causes an implosion of arcane damage that just consumes all the stacks slowly over time. And there's some stuff that you can use in order to play around with Sentinel stacks, whether they get consumed automatically or they start getting generated automatically against low health targets. So it's literally just passive damage, and it's just doing 25% more. Plus, the Boon of a Loon that we talked about earlier from the Lunarstorm is now present throughout the Lunarstorm itself. So while the Lunarstorm is active, all of your aim shots now deal 20% more damage. That can also be amplified with things like Spotter's Mark. So you're doing additional damage, stack it with all these other components, all these other effects, while the Lunarstorm is active, and you also get 2 shots after the Lunarstorm is gone. It's a very straightforward tier set, and for Marksmanship Hunter, it just amplifies your primary ability of aim shot, makes Lunarstorm a little bit stronger because now it's a burst window for you, and it also gives you a little bit more damage than Sentinel, which is, I mean, you're never going to say no to that. However, where Sentinel becomes kind of wild is when you pick up a spec like Survival Hunter. Because for a Survival Hunter, the tier set number-wise is a lot different. So for Marksmanship Hunters, those numbers are tamed. 20% more damage on aim shots? Makes sense. As a Survival Hunter, Wildfire Bomb damage is increased by 10%, and Wildfire Bomb is the ability that procs your Lunar Storm. Right, so there's going to be yet another ability that will also be reset whenever you're using your Wildfire Bomb ability. When Lunarstorm fades, you gain Boon of a Loon, causing the next 2 Wildfire Bombs to deal fewer arcane damage. So it's still technically right now fire, but it's supposed to be arcane damage, and have their damage increased by 150%. So if I were to, let's say, buff up my pet, use a couple of kill commands so my next 4 grenades are buffed up, 1 grenade, another, I need a cooldown reduction, another grenade, and you can see how much damage the grenades can do. Up to 25, okay, these training dummies do take a little bit more damage, but even in dungeons, up to 28 million damage with a Wildfire Bomb, at least the initial hit. Wildfire Bomb does do like 80% more damage to the primary target anyway, so that initial damage is always fairly high, but with this proc, you can actually get it to be quite high, especially when it crits, and there's some crit damage synergy as survival as well. Plus, there's a little bit more damage changes to some of the talents that buff up Wildfire Bomb damage, so that also continues to stack into that tier set. With a 4 set, it's just like that of Marksmanship. Sentinel damage is increased by 25%. Boon of a Loon is now active for the duration of that Lunarstorm. So now, the way you want to use your cooldowns with Lunarstorm is actually a little different. I feel like that makes quite a bit of a change. So the way that I've been synergizing it with actually is Coordinate Assault, dropping it down to 1 minute with Symbiotic Adrenaline, since Lunastorm is active every 30 seconds, and I try to keep it on cooldown as much as possible. So the best way that I think is to make this work is to try to use as many abilities that give you grenades as possible. This is a lot better to show off in AoE. So the ability of Coordinate Assault will actually will grant you 3 stacks of Tip of the Spear, which is the ability that you normally would get from kill commands, to buff up the damage of all your abilities by 3, or by 15%, stacking up to 3 times. So what I'll do is I'll throw Grenade normally to enable Lunastorm, then I'll go into Coordinate Assault so I can get a refund back charge on a grenade, and then I can double grenade while I have the stacks of Tip of the Spear. Then, if you're in AoE with Butchery and Frenzy Strikes, Butcher will actually reduce the cooldown of Wildfire Bomb by 3 seconds, so you can get back a little bit quicker. There's also other abilities like Kill Command reduces the cooldown of Wildfire Bomb by 5 seconds, and then Grenade Juggler, Explosion Shot will reduce the cooldown of Wildfire Bomb by 2 seconds. So if you can play around abilities that will help reduce your cooldown, then you could actually get quite a decent bit of overall damage reduction. And I'm definitely not a Hunter main by any measure, but this is more or less how I've been able to do this so far in terms of my overall AoE damage. You just grenade as much as possible and try to make sure that I have kill commands up in order to buff up Wildfire Bomb, and use whatever other abilities I have that give me cooldown reduction while the Lunastorm is active. And it's eventually Lunastorm will be fading, so I want to get my grenades back as quickly as possible. And the damage you can do with grenades in AoE is actually pretty wild. 10 million, and I can definitely get it to be a little bit higher when I get all the procs happening at the same time. So you can play around a cooldown reduction mechanic as a survival hunter in order to get those bombs just a little bit quicker, in order to utilize that little window of Lunastorm and the damage amp that it offers, as it is a significant damage amp. So for survival, for marksmanship, you don't really change your playstyle. You basically are using as many aim shots during that window anyway, as best as you can. There may be an opportunity for you to bank some big aim shots for that window, so 20% more damage can be amplified, but 150% damage makes you really want to load up your Wildfire Bombs with as many amplifiers as possible. So this seems to be the best way that I've been able to really work this so far. The dot damage is kind of whatever, it's still decent, but that initial damage, especially to the priority target, is pretty wild, and the amount of damage you can do is kind of out of control. So the Survival Hunter tier set is very strong and very powerful, at least for the time being. There may be some tuning in the future, but increasing the damage of your Wildfire Bomb by 150% almost feels like they added an extra 0 by accident, especially since marksmanship is buffed by 20% while survival is 150. Maybe this is intended to really go into a big grenadier playstyle. It is passive, like, you don't really need to do anything too crazy to adjust to this playstyle. But this is overall, I kind of like the tier set. It's very straightforward. It plays well in Lunastorm, and it just gives you an enhanced burst window during that ability. And I actually kind of like it. Sentinel has been a very passive hero talent for a very long while, and all it was about is getting as many Lunastorms as possible, and it's let Lunastorms do damage for you. But now it gives you a Lunastorm burst window, and it allows you to shift around your abilities a little bit, especially survival, so you can get more grenades, and it feels satisfying to be able to do so effectively. I actually kind of like it, even though it's a very simple tier set. Now, the last hero talents set of hero talents that we get to take a look at is the Pack Leader, which is shared between Beast Mastery and Survival. The tier set for the most, or because the hero spec for the most part is all about summoning pets through certain abilities, primarily Kill Command, and there are some things that you can use like a Bestial Wrath or Coordinate Assault as Survival or Beast Mastery in order to summon an additional beast while also amplifying the effectiveness of your beast as well as your pets. Now, the actual tier set that follows with it is going to be a 2-set, which increases for Beast Mastery pet damage by 5%. Nothing crazy, but pets are like 80% of your damage, so that's a pretty sizable increase. Beast damage, and this means specifically beasts summoned by Pack Leader. These pets would be called beasts. A lot of players confuse this with dire beasts. No, not dire beasts. These are just beasts as part of the Pack Leader. So this is where they really should rename it to Pack Leader beasts, just so players wouldn't get confused, but beasts from Pack Leader, damage is increased by 15%, so like 2 of them. Summoning a beast will grant you 8% haste, mastery, or crit based on the beast that you summon for 8 seconds. The 4th set, summoning a beast while under the effects of Lead from the Front, rouses the nearby wildlife into a stampede, charging a target and dealing 6.6 million physical damage up to 8 enemies over 7 seconds. So for the specs of Beast Mastery and Survival, it's going to be a different ability, but later on the front for BM procs from Beast Show Wrath. So when you use it, your next skill command is going to guarantee summon an extra beast. And that is also going to cause a stampede that travels from your location with animals that are not supposed to be caught the way that they are, but they're supposed to rush the target down. There's a little bit of bugs happening right now because Stampede used to be an ability hunters had as a talent a while ago, like a very long while ago. But it seems like these pets get caught on things, but they're supposed to run across from you towards the target, trampling everything in the way. Alright, so now when I get Beast Show Wrath and I get pets summoned, I want to see if I can position them so they can... There they go. Yeah, so they are functioning here. Sometimes. Okay, not always. I think maybe you just want to back them too far. They just got caught on things. Not ideal, but you can kind of see the idea of what they're doing. As a pack leader, you basically will summon a Stampede, an ability that hunters used to have as a talent, but now now it's coming back as a four-set option. That being said, I like the thematics of it. The fact that you're summoning this army of beasts to trample across the targets. And early on in PTR, in Mythic Plus, it was very strong tier set. However, as you can see, the tier set itself can definitely put you in a bit of a hot water if it's buggy. So this was fixed at first, and then it broke, and then they tried to fix it, and now it's broken again. So if this continues on, you might not be able to get too much value out of Stampede. Though early on, this ability was cranking out crazy big numbers, as there was more ways to proc it. They'll either probably end up tuning it, but yeah. And hopefully this gets fixed in the future, because I like the thematics of it. The other spec that can talent into pack leader is survival, and for them the tier set is going to be about the same. Though their pet damage with this one actually gets increased not by 5%, but by 15%, so your normal pet damage with kill commands goes up significantly. This is really cool because survival hunters, they don't always get to lean into a heavy pet damage. There are a number of talents that can help increase the damage of the kill commands, for instance, as well as things like Flank and Strike that causes them and their pet to attack simultaneously, so there's a pet damage component in that talent as well. And then little things like Spearhead, which actually procs of your pet damage, causes that pet to bleed the target. So it's kind of cool that there's some actual tier set combination to make that pet more effective as a companion. A nice passive little increase, but also could potentially make you want to pick up some of those, or basically all of those kill command talents. It also does grant your beast a damage the beast summoned from the pack leader 50% damage amp, and summon a beast also grants you haste, crit, and mastery, which are all good for 8 seconds. The 4 set is the same, summoning a beast while under the effects of lead from the front, which survival hunters get to do through the ability of Coordinated Assault, which can be reduced down to a minute cooldown, so it's fairly regular use. Will summon the a pack leader beast, and it increases your beast damage by 25% and your pet damage by 30%. So it's quite a significant damage jump altogether. Plus, also, it'll cause a wildlife to be roused, doing 6.3 million damage through stampedes. With the way that Survival Hunter positions itself, it can actually, I mean, it's going to be most cases very, very melee of their target. So for them to be able to summon that beast and get a stampede that strikes through everything in front of you and behind you, positionally is a little bit better than that of Beast Mastery. Less chances for things to get caught, but still an opportunity for things to get caught in weird spots either way, which is unfortunate, not gonna lie. But you can see the damage of Stampede can actually do quite a decent bit if you're positioned in a good spot. Plus the cooldown reduction of your Coordinated Assault being down to 1 minute could also help it out tremendously as well. So for them, it's more of a passive option of a hero talent tier set. Basically, it may incur certain talents, but nothing crazy, nothing amazing. And again, the actual Stampede can be very, very buggy. But yeah, definitely a couple of different quirks for them to iron out, but at least it's trying to buff up the whole playstyle of the pack leader. I like how they're trying to make the pet itself a little bit more effective for survival. Like your primary companion is like a huge portion of your damage with this one. So I think that's really, really cool. But it feels like survival definitely has a couple of choices, especially with that big wildfire bomb playstyle that Sentinel offers. But with that being said, as always, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give this video a like. I would very, very much appreciate it. Also, join our Discord community, especially if you want to keep up with any of the newest class changes every time we get a new build for the patch 11.2 over on the PTR. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see all of you guys in the next one.